Are you a Christian songwriter wishing you could be heard by the right people in Nashville? Yeah, we get it. You've been writing for years, but you have no idea how to be heard, how to get your songs out there, or how to connect your talent with opportunities. You feel stuck and wonder if you'll ever get a real break. NCS Bootcamp is your chance to be heard by taking your songwriting to a level you've only dreamed of. It gives you hands-on, personalized coaching and mentoring to help you think and write like a professional Christian songwriter determined to impact the world with your songs. If you're ready to empower your songwriting dreams, go to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com/bootcamp to book your free songwriting breakthrough strategy call today. Become the songwriter you were born to be with NCS Bootcamp.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisholm, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. Hey everybody, John Chisholm here. Welcome to the show. I have to tell you, every time you listen makes me happy. I love doing this show. I love meeting the people we get to meet, and I love bringing you quality content every single week. Now, we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary here on the Song Revolution podcast, April 1, Easter Resurrection Day. So grateful for Jesus and everything that he's done for us, and he's the one who makes this show possible. I guess you could say we're sponsored by Jesus, and I love that. And I believe he's ready to sponsor you today. So look to him for everything that you need. He is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, and he supplies all of our needs, and he gives us strength to live every single day. I hope that you find some creative strength and some fun and some inspiration here on the podcast, and today is absolutely no different. We have the inimitable, I love saying that word, inimitable. That means she cannot be imitated. The inimitable Bonnie Keene of First Call and the Eaglemaniacs. And she is going to be talking about her 3 decades of hit making. Now, not only has Bonnie Keene been nominated for 5 Grammy Awards, 1 Emmy, and she's won 3 Doves. She's a singer, songwriter, recording artist, author, and actress. Bonnie Keene is one of the most loved talents in Nashville. I've loved her forever. Bonnie, I know you're listening to this, and you know I love you, honey. You are so awesome. And she has been 1/3 of the classic CCM trio First Call with Marty, McCall, and Mel Tunney. Bonnie began her Christian music career when she was asked just by her neighbor, Mike Blanton, to sing backing vocals for a young artist that Bonnie had never heard of named Amy Grant. And it was on those first tours with Amy that Bonnie's own heart for expressing her devotion to Christ was discovered, which started her down counting 3 decades and counting career and ministry that is just absolutely amazing. She's performed on stages throughout the world, including the Grammy Awards, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, and on tours with First Call, of course, Amy Grant, Sandi Patty, BeBe and CeCe Winans, to name just a few. She's part of the Nashville Shakespeare Theatre. Yes, all the these and thous. And she travels with Windborne Music's tribute to the music of Michael Jackson. She's performed with the Malaysian Philharmonic Orchestra, and her theatrical highlights are immense. I could start naming them, but just crazy. This girl is the real deal. She's so talented and she's so fun. She's an author. She's published 3 books with Harvest House. She's written a musical called, let's see, what is it called? I just lost it. It's called Women Who Dare to Believe. That's it. Sorry, I was looking at my notes. Women Who Dare to Believe, about women in the Bible who've done amazing, miraculous things. And Bonnie Keene is an amazing and miraculous person herself. We had a great conversation. We talked about her deep heart for truth, for a return to the real gospel, some of her songwriting inspirations, and some highlights throughout her inimitable career. We love Bonnie. We love her voice. We love her contribution to the kingdom. And I know that you are going to enjoy our dear friend, the inimitable Bonnie Keene. Hey, Bonnie, so great to have you on the show today.
John, it's great to be with you. This is so fun.
It is fun. We're doing the miracle of Zoom, which is always great. You never know what's going to happen on the internet.
Oh, very interesting.
But so we go back. It's over 30 years. I mean, we were brand new in Nashville in 1983 when we were first getting started. So, the people have just heard the intro, so many of your amazing accomplishments. And we're going to talk a lot about what you're doing in life now and your acting and performing and all the things that you're doing. But why don't we go back a little bit and just reminisce and talk about when did you get here and the whole, genesis of First Call, and kind of catch us up if you don't mind.
Well, I was just thinking when you said 1983, that's when my daughter was born. And I am a Nashville native, so I've always lived here. So you moved to my hometown. And I grew up really unaware of Christian music and didn't know much of anything about it at all until Mike Blanton, who was my next door neighbor, invited me to go on the road and sing with a new artist they had named Emmy. I had never heard of Emmy. Like, where was I living? I had no idea. Really, I had no idea what God had planned. I had never been to a Christian concert until I was singing backup for Emmy. And I was just kind of undone by the whole experience in the best way, that you could write and sing about your faith. I was brought up in a denomination that taught me it was wrong to sing with instruments about your faith. It was very, very legalistic. And so I did a lot of theater and a lot of music outside of the church. And I didn't know anything about what was going on in the church. And God very graciously, really my whole life, John, has taken me into situations I knew nothing about and kind of used my gifts there. So it's been an ongoing awakening for me about what God does with the arts and what he does with music. And the First Call, we were a studio group that had just started working together, Mel Tunney and Marty McCall and I. And, Sandi asked us to go on the road with her and a really big tour that she had. And so we were offered record deals, and the record deals turned into awards and all that stuff. And I had no idea what I was doing. That I'd been performing and singing for years in secular events and clubs and in theaters, and didn't know that this Christian expression existed of songwriting and going in front of the church and trying to encourage them with the arts. So what a gracious God. I was on the road with Russ Taff for 2.5 years. He's like my brother. Being out with Emmy, being out with Russ, I look at that as sort of God's way of teaching me, like a little bit of schooling and how you could connect with an audience and how you could write. And then Sandi and then First Call took off, and it was like, oh, I guess I can write now about my faith and explore that. And that turned in and parlayed into books, which I never intended to write. And it's really interesting. I never have had any idea of where God was going to take me next. And it kind of feels that way now as well, which I find to be a very exciting thing.
Wow. That is amazing. And there's just so much, because this has been 30 years of history for you in all kinds of venues and with all kinds of amazing people. Tell us real quickly about your books, because I don't want to miss talking about that, and we might forget about it once we get over into the music stuff. But tell us about the books a little bit.
I love your podcast because it's all about using our creativity to glorify God and to tell our stories. And I journal. I've always journaled since I've been a little girl. And out of those journals have come songs and have come books. I never intended to write a book again. I was journaling through a really difficult time in my life about what God was teaching me through a divorce that I went through and being a single mom. I went through a really severe period of depression. And I was writing about it. And a really good friend of mine who works with a publishing company looked at she said, I want to look at what you're writing. And she said, do you need to publish this? And I went, publish your journals? No. And she said, no, there's so many people that are dealing with this stuff, and maybe what you're writing can help somebody else. And I thought, well, okay. So with fear and trepidation, I worked with some great people at Harvest House, editors and people who took what I was writing and helped me tell my story. And I had 3 books published with Harvest House. And then I've continued to write. Nan Gurley and I have written a 2-woman musical called Women Who Dare to Believe, and have written 2 Bible studies from that, which we never saw coming. So, the writing process for me is kind of therapy. So, but out of the honesty of that interaction with God, he uses it. So, yeah, it's been, 14 projects with First Call, of which I wrote a lot of music, 3 books, 2 Bible studies. I don't know what else is coming. I write a lot of theatrical pieces. I'm not sure what to do with them. I've used some of them when I go out and speak and do women's events. I have interactive video. Try to just incorporate what God has put in me to make the most effective connection with the audience and to bring him glory.
So it sounds like you're, of course, all of these serendipitous intersections that God has brought to you, and he's given you a platform. Obviously, he's moving, has moved, is moving, will continue to move through your life. But these things were natural and not sought after. You didn't go chasing these things. God just brought them to you.
He seriously did. I have a lot of students. I do some coaching now too, private coaching. And I have people, of course, I'm sure you do, that come up to you and say, John, how do you become a songwriter in Nashville? There's no formula that I know, but I do know one thing, and I've said this to a lot of younger kids and a lot of other generations, is I did get on the floor, literally on the floor, every day early in my life. And I said, okay, Lord, I don't know what you want me to do. I have this gift. I don't have that gift. I have this gift. What would you want me to do with it? What would you open up? And I was acting. I was doing some modeling. I was doing starting to do some film work, starting to do, songwriting. And I said, I don't know what you want me to studio work. And the studio thing really took off first. And then over time, I've seen God just open, as Ephesians says, more than we can ask, dream, or imagine. He's opened up other areas of using my gifting that have surprised me. But I would say that that's where I started, was just like, what do you want me to do with this?
Yeah.
And then just being willing to, it takes a bit of courage in following Christ into the arts, into that world, into songwriting and the arts, to say, okay, I'm going to step out. Because as you know, songwriting is so personal. It's and the arts is so personal. This is what I believe. This is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like. Reject or accept me. But I think in him, and following him, trusting that he uses it, it's become quite the adventure, a lifelong adventure. And God is so the artist. He is the creator artist. And I'm a little bit concerned and perturbed at times with what I see happening now in our culture, which is a lot of self-salvation themes being written. And we have failed abysmally at trying to save ourselves from the beginning of time. And I see a lot of self-salvation creeping into lyrics and songs in all kinds of ways. And I kind of like it, we better stay focused because there is only one way to be saved from, I know for me, to be saved from myself. And that is in humbly submitting myself first to him. So that's one of the passions of my heart right now, is to just be one of those voices that said, let's stay focused on him first.
Wow. Well, you're kind of almost quoting Thomas Merton when he talks about self-salvation strategies or self-saving strategies. And I think that we all, just because we're born of the fall, we want to figure out how to save ourselves, climb up the steps of the temple on our bloody knees and earn salvation in one way or the other, but we can't, obviously. So I love that about you. I want to go back to what we were talking about, because the point I was trying to make was that all of these expressions have been authentic for you. They haven't been things that you saw somebody else doing. And like you said just a minute ago, all the people that asked me how to become a successful songwriter, and you, how to become an artist and an actress and all the things that you do. But it's like, they were serendipitous and authentic to you. And I don't know why I want to stick on that point for a minute, but I think it's just a real important point because we see so much fakery, right? I mean,
I think you're right about the fact that because it was organically part of who I am.
Yes, love that.
Organically came out of me. I started playing by ear when I was about 4 on the piano. And like, I just organically music was coming out of me. That's what, theater was coming out, and then God used it. But yeah, it was not a manufactured thing at all. And one of the things I think that God has blessed is a bit of vulnerability that I just bring to what I do on stage or in a platform or in a studio. It's like, yeah, I'm really glad to be there. Let's go do what we do.
Yeah.
I had no preconceived idea about what Christian artists should be. And once again, being out with Amy and Russ, who were very organically who they were. And it was unique being around that whole, and you were around that whole stream of artists. Rich Mullins, I worked with, these people that organically brought their artistry to an audience. Freed me up to say, okay, when I get on stage, there's no wear this, stand there, say this, do this gesture. It was like, it's me. The first time I was invited to speak at a women's event, it's interesting when you write a book, they ask you to speak, like that's supposed to come hand in hand. I don't know if every author wants to speak, but I've never been to a women's event. So is that coming up on your screen?
Yeah, but it's okay. Another angel just got their wings.
I've never been to a women's conference ever. I went, okay, what do you do at a women's conference? I thought, well, I'll share my story. I'll put some interactive theater in it. I will sing where I think that could help bring the point home even more because music is so powerful. So I put together my keynotes based on what I thought organically would work from me. So for better or worse, I have just always operated that way. God has allowed me to. And it's kept me on my toes and kept me learning, but it's also kept me from trying to copy or replicate something someone else has done. And I do see that definitely happening now.
All the time. Well, you are totally an original, and that's what I love. And I know so many millions of people love about you. When you perform, you're just all out there. You just bring it all. You leave it all on the stage. And for as many times as I've seen you through these, many years, I think my favorite is with Tim Akers and the smoking section. I mean, when you've sung with them.
You saw me in just total childlike, rapturous singing. I grew up singing that music, the Earth, Wind, and Fire stuff and all those, which I actually think is just brilliant music. The way a lot of the 70s and 80s music that's being replicated now, which is interesting. People are coming back around to it again. But that band and, those musicians, and we all have a lot of history. Eaglemaniacs, the same thing. We've all been through a lot of life together. So to go out and sing Henley music and the Eagles harmonies and all that, it's just like, look around the room and there's a lot of music business people that it's kind of like this whole gathering of just having fun. I have a good time.
Well, and you do it so totally well. It's authentic. And of course, those listening who don't know who Tim Akers is, he's just a monster. He's one of the preeminent musicians in this town. And he's put together, they call it Tim Akers in the smoking section because that section is absolutely smoking. And all the wonderful players, the horn players, the rhythm players, it's off the chains. Great. And singers.
Fun because people don't realize Nashville has that kind of R&B, but that really the musicians here can play anything and just feel it. Makes you really proud. It's my hometown. I'm really proud of them. Yep.
Yeah, well, that's my favorite venue. We love going down to 3rd and Lindsley, and we've been 2 or 3 times, and it's always different. He's always got a great, not only you guys and just the standard, but then he brings people. These famous people come on like crazy. It's so fun. So you listeners out there, if you're ever in Nashville and can check out Tim Akers in the smoking section, hopefully you'll catch Bonnie on the show that night. Say that again. Or the Eaglemaniacs, absolutely. I haven't had the pleasure yet, so I will definitely come. Are you guys playing anytime soon?
Playing in April, April 14th, and we're playing in June. I'll make sure to get you tickets. Yeah, I'll make sure.
We would just kill. We'd love to be there. That'll be great. Then next podcast we'll talk about Eaglemaniacs because I'll have some personal experience. So that's great. Well, let's dig in a little more to some of the issues that are really important to you. I mean, you mentioned earlier about in the early days being a female in the whole writing and artistry and things when, obviously our whole culture is coming along in recognizing the talent, the power of women in general. But maybe take us through a little bit of that and what's important. You have the book and the musical Women Who Dare to Believe. So just kind of take us into some of the important issues in your life.
Well, I mean, I think the whole social media thing has opened up how deep and wide the human heart hurts. It's just a rolling feed of need that I see out there every day for validation or identification or purpose or meaning, which is our timeless issues for all of us. Some days it feels so oppressive to even think about how much anger and vitriol and women are hurt and men are hurt and they're confused and what's going on. And it's nothing new to God. Obviously, this is why Christ came. But I'm currently really, this is the analogy that just keeps coming to me, is that if I live too much in a horizontal view without the vertical, I'm in trouble. Because I see a lot of our culture living horizontally in what everything looks like or what's being said. So we're trying to outshout each other, out-validate each other if we do this enough or we do that enough or we're that. And without the vertical, without the cross, which cuts through it and heals us, we are screaming and yelling at each other. And I've lived long enough to see this happen a couple times now where there are protests and there are marches, and rightfully so. Social justice has always been the heart of God, as has been sin. And no one talks much about sin anymore. So I find it fascinating to think about how we have that conversation now. We have talked ourselves out of thinking we needed to address sin. And I think that's the root of every problem, from women being abused to whatever. I mean, when Nan and I wrote Women Who Dare to Believe, it really purely came out of she and I loving Bible study, loving to study women in the Bible, because women have always dealt with the same issues of being abused, of being, treated lesser than, or being, not valued as much within a culture. A lot of cultures in the Western world, women have been given a lot more freedom than other parts of the world, but I think we weren't thinking about women's rights or women being given a voice. We were just thinking, look, this is so wonderful to look at these women and their stories and go in depth with them. We have them intersect with each other in the musical, and to speak about how Christ came in and validated women forever. He really leveled the field for all of us. Men, women, everyone. And we're actually doing the musical twice on the road this spring. It's a 90-minute musical using a 20-foot piece of scarlet material, which represents the covenant of God that runs in both directions with Christ. And we do no sets, nothing. It's just Nan and I. We have these small scarves that represent the covering of the blood of Christ, but we just intersect with each other in very modern vernacular. And it's funny because that musical and that Bible study is becoming more relevant to the issues that are being discussed now, I think, than ever. Than when we wrote it in 2009, I think. But I'm really grieved. I'm really grieved. But I think it's nothing new to be grieved by how sin is running rampant and distracting people. I mean, I think the women who have been hurt, yes, they need to be heard, but heard by who? And healed by who? We can't heal ourselves. Women can go out and scream and yell and say, we need to be validated. Well, yeah, God knows that. That's why he actually came in to our lives to give us that sense of worth. And apart from him, we're just going to be yelling at each other. And I think that could be said of just about any issue that we hear right now that's being, and because like this podcast, wonderful thing, we can actually talk to each other a lot more because of the internet. That's not going to change. So how do we bring our experience of Christ into this vernacular, into this conversation? I think Tim Keller is probably one of my favorite pastor teachers that I've ever heard. I listened to a lot of his teaching, and he was talking about how we communicate the gospel in a culture that's been inoculated against Christ. We've been given so much of Jesus that it just rolls off or it's dismissed. So to have this conversation about a timeless Savior who is always relevant and always working, how do we have this conversation about sin, which is brokenness, which is hurt, which is social injustice, which is, child trafficking and abuse and human rights? How do we have that conversation now in a culture that doesn't want to talk about anything being broken, yet we're screaming about being broken? Really, really is an interesting thing to sit with and to wrestle with. And I would hope that, those of us that are writing and trying to speak from every generation right now will be able to find ways that God will inspire us. I know that he will, because the gospel never stops coming. No matter what happens, Jesus just keeps coming, just keeps working. And that's a very exciting thing. So, yeah, I weep over it. Honestly, I wrestle with it. I weep over it. I see it in my own family, brokenness in myself, the ongoing need to recalibrate every day with him. And then sometimes as a creative person, it will stop me down because I let too much of the horizontal into my day. And I have to put more of the vertical back in. So, yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive.
It is. So do you see things changing in Christian music or in music in general that's more open to you as a female creator, artist, vocalist, or is it just like you don't think about it that much? Or
I have never seen my gender as an issue. I've definitely seen things happen in our industry to women, or see women take advantage of being a woman. I mean, I've seen it work both for and against artists, but I don't ever see gender as an issue as an artist. Will women, have I been a part of the Me Too experience? Yeah. I think you got to go all the way back to the garden and talk with Eve about how long that's been going on. Maybe now it's surfacing in a different way, and maybe there will be some people look into finding some resolution and healing outside of our culture, because it's not going to happen within our culture. It's going to have to happen with God. And so maybe that's what God's doing. I think Christian music is ripe for new voices to come in. And I'm excited to see what this next generation is going to do. It's really interesting. I have several younger students right now that I did not anticipate, like 9. One girl in particular who's just turned 9. There's this massive voice. I mean, she's like a Pixar person that just came to life, and she just sings. You go, what happened? Where did you come from? And she has no ambition. She could do anything. It's interesting, but she's extremely interested in who Jesus is from a 9-year-old's perspective. And I go, what's God going to do with that generation of 9-year-olds that walk in that go, I love Jesus. Jesus is amazing. Like, okay. Because part of me is jaded by what I've seen in the last few years happen in the industry, I think. I've been hurt in some ways that I didn't expect. First Call had a bumpy ride here and there, but God kept healing, keeps working, has moved us on. That's all good. But, I sometimes, in my more cynical moments, I'll say, well, it's all going to hell in a handbasket. But, it's not. It's not. It's always been jacked up. We've always needed new voices to come in and to speak to the next generation. And God knew exactly when we were going to live. John, He knew what was going to happen in your life and mine. He knows what's coming after us, and he's equipping those people. So I would hope to see more of a bold declaration of the gospel, but in a way that speaks into our narrative, because man, we're stubborn and we've got a wall up and we're just determined to save ourselves in this world. And I hope people keep hitting enough walls to realize that the beauty of God's love is that it overrides all of those self-saving attempps.
Wow. That's great. Now, you mentioned Tim Keller, and I've been through my Tim Keller phase as well. Prodigal God, just changes your life. But are there other authors or creators that fuel your creativity or just your sense of God in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I've returned over and over again to Madeleine L'Engle's writing. I would say her book, Walking on Water, which is about Christian art. I would encourage anyone to read that. I've read it so many times in so many of her books. She has a wonderful perspective on how we all feed into the river of creativity, which is God's work. And she says, never discount what you do. Shakespeare feeds into the river. Your writing feeds into the river. Like, there is this river, and it's all coming from the source of God's outpouring. So never be afraid to be the best artist you can be, to write the best work you can, to let God use it, to trust him with that. When you think about A Wrinkle in Time, which is, I'm not sure I'm going to see that film, because I think they took a lot of the pivotal Christ references that she put in intentionally out of it. And I'm like, okay, fine. But that book was not published for 10 years. She was rejected for 10 years. She just kept taking it in. She just believed in the work. I really love her work. I love Frederick Buechner's writing. I like John Piper's teaching. I like to look at what, Ravi Zacharias is a brilliant apologist. I listen to Sting's music. I listen to Mozart. I listen to everything that I think will spur. Bruce Hornsby is one of the artists that tremendously encourages me. Ricky Skaggs is one of Brent, my husband, has produced almost all of his projects and engineered them with Ricky. And Ricky's a real man of God and a great artist on top of it. So it's been a really inspiring thing to be around him. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people out there doing some amazing things and writing some amazing things that it's just an endless flow of work that inspires. But there are definitely certain writers that I go back to and go, what was that again? Yeah, Madeleine L'Engle has this whole poem that she wrote about the Saturday between Friday and Easter, where she paints this image of Jesus storming through hell in history and reaching out and grabbing all of the ones and bringing them back. And he approaches Adam and touches his hand, first to Adam. And she describes so beautifully the searing pain of life flowing back into Adam from Christ, and how he he literally went into hell and went, you will not have mine. I think imagination, C.S. Lewis, okay, huge. I'm a huge C.S. Lewis fan. I try to read the Chronicles of Narnia once a year, and The Weight of Glory, and they just sit with a lot of bigger thinkers than me. Yeah, it's exciting. I think the arts are a powerful thing. They touch our hearts.
They really are. Yeah, you've named a lot of my favorites as well. And it's always amazing to me that aspiring writers don't read more. It's like, and I keep saying, guys, go fill your heart and your mind. You can't write on empty. You can't sit down at your keys or your laptop or your guitar and write on an empty tank. If your creative tank is empty, you're not going to come up with anything. And, I joke with them about writing ex nihilo, like out of nothing. And it's like, only God can do that, right?
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I actually led a class last fall at Lipscomb University for contemporary writers and artists. And one of the assignments I gave them was to take 10 minutes out of every day and out of that still time to just listen to what was going on around them and keep a journal of what they heard, what was the underscore of their life, what sounds were they hearing, what were they watching, from the simplest thing to the most intricate. And they resisted it. They didn't want to do it. A lot of them didn't do it. the ones that did wrote very honestly that it was very hard to even be still for 10 minutes a day, which in our, a lot of empty noise going on around us. But I do think it's important if you're going to write if you're going to write as a person of faith in Christ, you got to sit in his word. Whatever that is for you, you've got to be in his word. And then you're right, listening to what he has poured into other artists, what's coming out of even artists that aren't Christians. God is graciously deposited in common grace and a massive amount of talent into all kinds of people all around the world for centuries. And we can all be stimulated and inspired by being part of that community and reading and listening, being awake, keeping journals, writing things down, what sparked what thought, sit with it again. Yeah, only God can create something from nothing. That's really good.
But we think, that we can do it. And it's like, I know that we're one with God, but we're not God. And, if you want to write beautiful words, you have to be filled with beautiful words. If you want to write beautiful music, you've got to study the craft and fill your tank. I don't know if you've read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic yet.
No, I need to read it.
She wrote Eat, Love, Pray, and it's not Christian and it's Zen and it's more, transcendentalism and all that. So, I'm not endorsing that on our Christian show here, but the point is the creativity. And she describes and writes about creativity and the process of creativity in a way that it was just crazy good for me. And it's called Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert. And
look that up. Oh,
yeah.
I think writers, whether they know it or not, they're being inspired by God, and there's a lot that we can take away.
I think we box ourselves in when we only read Christian writers, we only listen to Christian music, and we have all this judgmentalism. And I love what you said a while ago about common grace. And, every person on the planet is a reflection of God, whether they accept Jesus Christ as their personal savior or not. Every single person who's ever lived has lived because of God, right? So that I could go on a tangent about that and talk about that book. But I've loved Anne Lamott's books. She's, bird by bird.
Favorite.
Yeah, just crazy stuff. So, but I love so many great Catholic authors. Buechner, Richard Rohr, just. Whether you agree with them theologically or not, and I'm talking too much now, I need to get back to you, but.
You're talking about what I'm very passionate about. Yeah. I think we have to listen to, I think we have to be careful what we put in here because it does come out. And I think music has the power to bypass our intellect and go straight to our heart, which is why it's something that we're entrusted with, what we do with it. To me, it's a very sobering thing to think about the fact that music literally just goes straight into people's souls. That they have a visceral response to a melody before they even hear the lyric. You don't think about it. It just go, I love that. Or, why did it make me? So what are we saying and why? And how can we say it in the best possible way, with the best crafting? And I think that does come from listening to the greatest people that are doing it and then finding your own voice in that, but always being a learner. The day we stop on that, I think we're never going to arrive on this side of heaven or the other side to the ends of the mysteries of God. And he is the source. I keep going back. He is the source. And we live in a culture that gives a lot of idols, puts a lot of people on pedestals. And I think it's just, we should be very careful about what we expose ourselves to, but in trusting God, where did he pour something really amazing into someone? Annie Lennox, Ashley Cleveland. I think that Paul McCartney. I don't have to agree with his politics. The man's a brilliant writer.
Oh yeah.
Why are we not listening? We should be listening to, Rachmaninoff and I don't know. There's just so many examples of great art and great music, great theater, great Sondheim. There's so much truth in Sondheim's lyrics, in his writing. And I know that he's not a professed Christian, but man, whether or not he knows it, he's preaching.
Absolutely. Well, there's one bass note in the Rachmaninoff Vespers that is transcendental. I mean, it's like, I don't even know what note it is. They must have brought in Tibetan monks to sing it, but it's like every time I get to that moment, it's like, I don't know, I think I levitate or something. It's so crazy amazing. I
listened to something, Adagio, someone wrote a brilliant blog about why music is powerful. And they said, if we just all came together out of a big bang and we're all going back to nothing, which is a whole other conversation, then where did music come from and why is it important? And in the middle of this, he posted this piece that was written in 15 something, whatever. I just burst into tears. I burst and I couldn't stop crying. And it was because it was such a visceral response to the beauty and the melody and the strings and the whole, and I lost it. It's proof of God. It really is proof of God.
Absolutely. Well, take us to maybe one or two highlights of your music and your career, maybe a song that you've written or sung that's been just incredibly special to you, even though you may have sung it, 8,000 times in your career. What are a couple of highlights for you?
There's so many on different levels. There's so many highlights and moments of grace that God has allowed. I think working with First Call definitely remains one of the highlights for me. And there's, 14 projects there. And we sang on the Grammy Awards. That was terrifying. I don't know, that was a highlight. But recording, writing with them, writing for the three of us. Undivided remains a beautiful song to sing even more over time. Mel Tunney wrote that. Evidence of Love is one of my favorite pieces that I've written. I co-wrote that with Lowell Alexander, great writer. I wrote a song for my first solo project that's kind of become an anthem for me. And every time I sing it, God does something with me and with whoever hears it. It's called The Day I Laid My Isaac Down. And
I know that song, Carol Kent and the book. And great song.
That title after she heard it, which is an honor. That song has been asked to be used in so many different ways. And I always go, yes, you can't write a song like that and not say, use it, use whatever God wants to do with it. But that has become, I actually love singing Desperado with the Eaglemaniacs because we're all desperados. And I see it as a prayer. And when I perform it, that's how I bring it into that moment. And we're in a bar and I'm singing that song and people all of a sudden get very, very quiet and God does something. I mean, it's really interesting. I don't know. There are lots of great moments. I mean, I can continually amazed by just what God allows for me to experience. I've loved working with local theater companies, Studio 10. The Nashville Shakespeare Festival has been a great joy to do Shakespeare in my hometown with some great actors. I love some of the coaching I'm doing to be able to give back to people from what I've learned and especially to really seriously gifted younger talent that they're going to take it into their generation. It's been really fulfilling. I don't know if I could just choose one particular moment. There have been lots.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. And just such a blessing. Talk a little bit. That sounded so Christianese. Such a blessing. That's like, bless your darling heart. I didn't mean it like that. I was trying to transition to the next thought and that sounded so stupid. But but I was already thinking about the next question and because you mentioned your coaching. Tell us a little bit about your coaching and how people maybe can connect into you and your world and what that's all about.
I was asked to do Christ Presbyterian Academy where my children, both of my kids graduated from this school about 8 years ago. They asked me if I would hold a fine arts camp in the summer. And I went, well, that'll be fun. And okay. So I wrote 2 original musicals just pretty quickly, put them together, and decided that I would teach the musical, we would stage it, and they would record it all in 1 week, which was insane.
That is.
And out of that time, several families approached me about working with their kids one-on-one. Was not looking to do any coaching. I studied just enough vocal work to know how to use my voice, but I did not study a lot of classical voice. I studied a lot of classical piano. So I went, well, okay, let's see what happens. So I've ended up with having some amazingly gifted young people that have now just graduated high school, and now some younger kids coming in. Then Lipscomb University asked me to come on to work with their musical theater department, which has been a joy because that's really what I've done for many years. And to be able to coach that way, it's a different way of coaching than just pop work. And it's like, okay, well, and I can give back one-on-one when you spend an hour with somebody one-on-one saying listening to their voice, what do they bring? How are they going to use that in their craft? It's quite personal and evangelical in another strange kind of way that I never anticipated, if that's the word to use, an evangelical. I definitely share my faith in the middle of it and what Christ is to me. And I'm easy to find. I have a website, bonniekeen.com. I haven't updated it in a while, but it has all these different pages of what I do on there. It's kind of like I'm kind of diverse in a lot of ways, but it's interesting how I keep thinking, well, I won't teach anymore. And then somebody comes along that I do coach, and then it's quite a blessing. It's quite a blessing.
So you and Nan are going to be out doing your musical, Women Who Dare to Believe, right? A couple of times this spring. What else is coming up for you?
I'm speaking to a group, Salvation Army leadership team of young ministers, actually in a couple of weeks in Atlanta. They're which I'm excited about because they asked me to come in because they want to just spark them to take the gospel in different ways into their culture. And I'm interested to hear what they're going to say and what they're doing. So I do my own. I go out as a solo artist and I speaker. Sometimes I do concerts. The Eaglemaniacs are going on the road. We're going to Dallas or somewhere in May. It's a little something different every week. I still do studio work. It's really interesting. It's every week's a little different. And I'm never really sure what God is going to open up next. But I keep asking, in hymns, I got to say, John, the old hymns I grew up with have become more special to me over time. The words, I would say again that I'm continually moved by that, and just where he leads me, I will follow. I'll go with him to the garden. What does that mean? I'll go with him through hell, my own personal hell. Yeah. I'll go with him. I think we sing a lot of those things. I was thinking about that this morning, knowing I was going to talk to you. In the cross, be my glory ever. In a bloody, beaten, pulped Savior, be my glory. Those things are things that are more and more interesting to me over time. So I'm looking at, I'm still writing. And I keep thinking, I've got to do another project. What will it be? Part of me is intimidated by so many blogs, so many people on the internet. I think they don't need anybody else to put anything else out. But then I think, as Madeline Lingle would say, keep feeding the river. So I was like, with what you're doing with this, it's wonderful because who knows who's going to be encouraged by what you're doing right now and what people are seeing. So if we can be part of that, it's a wonderful thing.
Well, Bonnie, you have been a lovely part and will continue to be an amazing part. And we're so excited to have caught up with you a little bit today and hear a little bit of your heart, your passion, celebrating 30 some odd years of this incredible work and more to come. So just real quickly as we close out, do you have any little thing that you would share with our aspiring songwriters who listen to our podcast every week?
Yeah, I would say keep listening to John's podcast. For one, you do need to be literate. Expose yourself to great art, to great dance, to great theater, to great music. It will all come out. What goes in will come out of your filter. And I would say trust God with that and be bold. And I would say, please don't replicate. Let's do something new. Christ is all about doing something new in us. We need your generation to speak into our narrative now. It's looks crazy out there, but it isn't crazy to him. He knew you were going to live when you're living. He gave you the gifts you're given to use now and to use well. So I would say don't compromise. Don't go, oh, this worked, so I'll do that. Let's see what comes out of you organically. I actually am excited to see that. Don't compromise. Don't compromise on your vision. Don't let somebody else tell you what that is. Let God tell you that. Go forth mightily. I mean, I think Christ is endlessly fascinating to follow because he was extremely humble to the cross and courageously bold. If you can mix those two elements into what he's put into you, humility and great courage, you will draw people to him. And that is what we want to see happen with all great art. And go out and do things in the secular market. Go out into, if that's your calling, but know that you're going to have to really know who you are in that because the world will try to tell you something that will lessen what God wants for you. So go forth mightily in his power and just be bold and creative and humble.
Great words from our dear friend, the inimitable Bonnie Keene.
It's an honor to be on your podcast, John. I love watching you inspire me so much, watching what you're doing at this point in your career as well. It's really a great giving back.
Thanks, Bonnie. Such a pleasure to have you on today. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening in today on the Song Revolution podcast. If you're wanting to take your songwriting to the next level, be sure to jump over to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com right now to check out all the valuable resources that we have there for you, especially NCS membership, where you can go deeper into a community of like-minded songwriters and tap into encouraging blogs, videos, powerful masterclasses, and a whole lot more to get you where you really want to go. I'll see you next time.